In today's lecture, we are going to be talking about the first major phase in the life cycle of a production system, which is introducing a new product or a service. This is a very strategic decision because the choice of the right product or the service actually has a long lasting impact on the performance of the system, and therefore it is very important that we make this decision very carefully. What we are going to be talking about is the major aspects in new product design and the kinds of decisions which are required when one has to make a decision about a new product or service. Incidentally, we are talking about both products and services together. You know, the world is making a transition from products to services, and you know that both these things require similar kinds of decisions, and therefore we will talk about both products and services in one go. Let us see how ideas for new products or services originate. What is the source of these ideas? So it has been seen typically that the customer need is generally the major driver for launching a new product. Whenever there is a customer need, and mind you, customer needs are dynamic, they keep changing. You keep on generating more and more needs, and therefore there is always a need for generating more products. Quite often it is seen that the marketing department of a company is generally responsible for generating the maximum number of new product ideas. And the reason for this is that this is the department which is in intimate touch with the customers, and they know that what the customer wants, and therefore they are immediately able to suggest that new products should be satisfying such and such need of the customer. Production department could also be a source for a new product idea, but generally the kinds of ideas that come from production departments are ones which are more concerned with manufacturability of the product, talking more about how products could be assembled, and therefore the design should facilitate those kinds of things, and so on. Normally many companies have design and development departments, and the purpose of the design and development or the research and development department in any company is to generate new ideas, develop new materials, new technologies, newer products, and quite often it happens that the number of ideas for new products, ironically, generated by this department of design and development is generally very limited. Vendors and subcontractors in an organization can also give you a large number of ideas, because they are the people who are intimately concerned with the development of the product. They provide the right kind of materials, the right kind of sub-assemblies, and they carry out a large number of other tasks associated with the product, and therefore apart from this intimate knowledge, they are also in touch with the customers and other people in the organization. Therefore their ideas too can be very valuable at times. The top management is another source from where ideas for new products and services come, and of course the reason why top management is capable of giving these ideas is primarily because of their concern for the organization. They have their money invested in the company, They want to make sure that whatever products are being made are actually being sold, and therefore they listen to almost everyone who comes to their office. They get a intimate feedback on their products, and therefore are also in a position to suggest what kind of products or services the company should be able to launch. The introduction of new products is also triggered in many instances by the development of new technologies, new materials, new processes, and as a consequence you have new products coming on the scene. And of course, finally, the changing lifestyles are responsible for the generation of new ideas, so on, right? It's like fashions. Yes, please.
Sir, what about cross-functional teams consisting of members from several different departments?
That's right, yes. Cross-functional teams mean that you have a team from a marketing department, production department, design and development, and they could all be contributing to giving you ideas. In fact, cross-functional teams have become very, very important these days, because there is a great pressure on reducing lead times, cutting down costs, and therefore these teams, which are actually people drawn from all these departments, are able to contribute very effectively, because their job is to develop products which are much more efficient. So you're very right, yes, cross-functional teams are very important too. Changing lifestyles, as I said, will change the kind of products that you need to produce totally, and this happens, for instance, in the garment industry very frequently. There is a demand these days for faded jeans. You normally don't wait for jeans to fade after 2 years. You want it to be faded right away when you want it there. So there's a new product, so they have to process the product appropriately. And so similarly, changing lifestyles can affect the way people live and the kind of products they use, and therefore the lifestyle is an important source of how individual products will be used and developed. What is the motivation in introducing new products? Let's put it this way. The motivation in interesting in these products is essentially there are two parties. There's a set of consumers on this side, who are the people who are actually looking forward to satisfying their need primarily. And there is the entire organization, production organization, which is headed by the boss and his production facilities and the marketing department, because these are major functions in any organization. And this entire organization is generally driven by profit. Generally, of course, there could be other goals as well. It could be talking about social service and so on, but those organizations really are not the organ. So we must remember, therefore, that these people who have these needs, these are the people who cash upon these needs and try to keep on developing newer and newer products. And in fact, it is in the interest of these people, especially the marketing guy, to keep on fanning the needs in such a manner that your needs keep on generating. So it's very much like if you've bought a corn cob from a typical person on the street sitting with a small furnace, and if he fans the furnace a little vigorously, you find sparks coming out very vigorously out of the whole thing. So needs in human beings are also like that. If you keep fanning these desires, you have more and more desires coming out, and that's what these people are actually cashing upon in terms of generating new products and things of that kind. So this is the primary motivation. They're interested in profit, and you are interested in satisfying a specific need. We were talking about sources of new product ideas earlier, but let us see what kinds of contributions different departments can make to different these kind of new product ideas. Incidentally, we have already seen that sales and marketing people, there was a survey carried out, and the results of that particular survey showed that sales and marketing people, generally because they are in close touch with the customer, are responsible for generating the largest number of ideas for newer products. And of course, next in the sequence comes top management, according to this survey, which is an active listener to both visitor and customer feedback. If you listen very carefully, and you will listen carefully only if you have something at stake. So top management has everything at stake, right? It's their investment. They would like to make sure that the products are doing well, and therefore they would be very keen to find out the feedback on the product and maybe suggest what kinds of products are to be floated in the near future. The production department is generally concerned with ideas which are limited to production ease and economics, which means you will make sure that a product is made in the with the right kind of tolerances, so that fitting various kinds of products or components is easier, it's easy to machine, put together, and those kinds of considerations. Normally a designer, if he is thinking in terms of an abstract design of a product, might not be that much concerned about how it's going to be made, whereas the production department people generally give much greater thought to how it is going to be made, and therefore their contributions generally lie in this particular category. And of course, research and development people are generally the last. I think that's the irony of the situation. A department which is generally designed to make new types of products is generally the last department, or comes last in the list for generating new product ideas. Why do you think this is so? Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Is it the number of products, new products, or is it the actual profit of new products? If you look at, for example, I don't know, medicine, stuff like that, Astra companies, the research and development departments generate, I don't know how many product ideas, but they're very profitable. Is it the number of products or how?
Here we are typically referring to, this particular survey has been done generally in the context of automobile sector, and in the automobile sector they have found that the kinds of new products, new designs which are developed, generally the research and development department takes over only after an idea is given. It is not that they give an idea for a new design, it's seldom that they do that. That's the idea. And the reason I think for this is that whenever it becomes a routine job for someone, if it is your job to give new ideas, let's say, you would give new ideas for the first 2 or 3 days. Thereafter you will probably, it will become a routine, mundane affair, and once it becomes a mundane affair, then your efficiency would tend to droop in that sense. So probably it's the same kind of situation here. But yes, R&D jobs are generally prompted by new developments in materials and technology, right? So they are aware of what's happening, what kind of new materials are there, what is the nature of technology, and their contributions to new products are in terms of utilizing these new products and new technologies. Let's try to now look at how new product ideas could be generated by an organization. What would be the procedure? Normally, the most commonly used method of generating new product ideas is, as our friend said earlier, by using cross-disciplinary teams, right? So normally you do brainstorming, and the brainstorming is preferably done by an interdisciplinary team, where you have people from different departments so that all aspects of the problem are reflected. So that's the brainstorming which is done. This team is apprised of what the company objectives and long-term goals are, what is the current economic scenario, what is the preferred field of activity or expertise. So if you are an organization into the fast food industry, for instance, then you know that that's your area of expertise, and therefore we have to think of new products in that area. and the approximate budget for the new product that you would like to spend. So once the team is briefed on this, and normally the team members are members of the company, but at the same time they are all given these basic goals and constraints that are specified, and then this particular team goes about the task of generating new product ideas. So each one generates ideas which are recorded without criticism or evaluation. This is a significant feature of brainstorming. When you are doing brainstorming, you do not evaluate ideas, you do not criticize ideas. Even if an idea is stupid, you record it and don't start criticizing the person who has given this particular idea. The reason for this is that basically at this stage we are talking about encouraging innovation, creativity in the individual. And you know, creativity can be a very it's sort of flowing. So if you try to curb it at that initial stage, the flow of ideas would stop. Therefore at this stage you might generate 40-50 ideas. The team would generate these 40-50 ideas, which could at a later stage be subjected to evaluation. Evaluation comes, but at a later stage. You are not to criticize or to evaluate the idea, because that would, for instance, take this example. If a small child comes to you and asks you a simple question, which might be very stupid, right? Which might be, I mean, like, why does the dog not walk with his legs up, let us say. If he asks you that question, the immediate response from your side may be to ask him to shut up. And if you do that, what would happen? You have actually totally stifled the creativity within him, and he is not even able to address that question, which at that particular stage is stupid. So that is the basic idea, right? It doesn't mean that you don't evaluate the idea. The only thing is that brainstorming, you will allow all ideas to come forth, and to encourage those ideas we don't criticize or evaluate them. After you have generated a list of say 40 ideas, the next stage in the process is evaluation of these new product ideas. So now you can afford to be critical, you can set norms, and then you can find out whether an idea was good or not. That is after your, it's like saying only after you have bucket in the water in the bucket can you actually count the number of glasses and do whatever you want. So first thing is, during the brainstorming you were filling up the bucket. Now you are merely evaluating all that you have got in the bucket. So the evaluation of the new product ideas could be done on a number of criteria. What are these criteria typically? Likely demand and pattern of growth. That means for the product that you are proposing, what do you think is the likely demand, and how do you expect the demand to behave in the future? These are two very fundamental questions. Do you expect the demand to go up, or do you expect the demand to go down in the future? So that's why we talk about likely demand and pattern of growth, both. Ease of raw material availability. You might have selected a product which you think is very good, but you got to find out whether raw materials for that particular product are going to be easily available. Do you foresee a kind of change in the government policy which will probably make that material either obsolete or difficult, or you might have to import it? So this ease of raw material availability is an important factor too. Availability of production technology. How are you going to manufacture this product? Are the machines required for making it available? Where do you have to import them? From Sweden or from US, or are they made in Ludhiana? And these kinds of issues become relevant. Competition and likely market share. This is a very important issue, because after all your product has to compete in the market where there are going to be other competitors. So you must know roughly what is going to be your market share. So it becomes an important aspect. Then from all these questions, basically you come down to what are the likely revenues, and what are the likely costs of operation, right? Some estimates of these things. And then of course talk about the entire product life cycle. That means you are talking about not only the product at the stage of inception, but the product after 2 years, after 5 years, and maybe after 7 years when the product is likely to be dumped. What is going to be the pattern of the revenues and the costs as it goes along during its life, in that sense. So an example to illustrate this process is taken up next. Right? Yeah, what you can do is, this is only illustrative. I mean, this example which I have cooked up for you is actually very just to illustrate how the process of screening of ideas would be done. Let us say that we are, as a company, thinking in terms of launching some new products. So as a consequence of the brainstorming session, people suggest that we can get into the manufacture of computer peripherals. Lot of scope. Fast food, let's try to compete with McDonald's. Fashion clothing is another area which we can possibly try to work on, and soaps and detergents, which is a relatively conventional area. These are relatively modern areas. So this list could be very long. It could be, as I said, 40 ideas, 50 ideas. So, but just to illustrate, suppose we have these 4 ideas, and we would like to assess these ideas on a number of criteria which we just mentioned. So you would say, what is the demand for this like? What is the competition for this like? What is the ease of raw material availability? What is the cost of processing? What is the likely profit? And all these factors are evaluated subjectively by the interdisciplinary team, and they gave 1 mark to the least desirable and 10 marks to the most desirable. So for instance, in computer peripherals, it is felt by the team that they deserve to get a score of 6 on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of desirability. Now competition means there is severe, if there is very severe competition, the score would be less. If there is if there is very less competition, the score would be more. That's what we are trying to say, more favorable, less favorable. So here the competition factor, it was estimated to be 3, and similarly ease of raw materials, cost of processing, likely profit, in some idea on a subjective scale of 1 to 10, which the team can decide so what to do. And then you can simply take a score and you can say, okay, these are the scores for the various product ideas that we had. So we are screening the ideas. So maybe out of this, the one best idea is a fast food idea. And if you are not satisfied with a fast food idea, yes please.
So in fact we are just adding them all up linearly, so we are giving equal importance to
That's right. You can give any weightage here, W1, W2, W3, W4, and then multiply like that, right? It is a weighted.
How do we estimate that weightage?
Subjectively. You estimate these weightages, whatever the team considers important, whatever the company considers important. Obviously all these things are important, but probably your likely profit is very important. This is also important. So you subjectively decide, the team decides. Mind you, this is not a rigorous evaluation. It's only evaluating the ideas, 40-50 ideas which you have generated. You want to evaluate them. So you can add it, or if you want some weightages to be given, you add the weightages. Conceptually, I mean, I was only trying to say that you can make the process of screening the ideas more quantitative rather than only qualitative, and that's the manner in which it can be done. Yes, a very interesting aspect of, because after all, a product is satisfying a customer need. Now what is a need, and what do we mean by desires? And how exactly do needs and desires come about, and what could be the, because after all, well, put it this way, desires are natural, right? Natural desires could be there, like hunger, shelter, love, security, very basic desires. These desires are generated by exposure to circumstances and temptations in life, right? As in advertisements on media, TV, neighbor, and so on. You may have seen a newspaper ad yesterday how the Harrods store in London has brought a Brazilian model who would sit in the window case of that particular shop and tempt customers, right? That's basically what you're all doing as far as advertisement is concerned. If there is someone who wants to sell chocolates, you have to get a couple of pretty girls to there, although of course a chocolate has nothing to do with girls. Does it have?
Yes.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Does it have?
Yes.
Maybe in Sweden, not
You
in
have to-
India.
You have to buy chocolate for them all the time. It's very expensive.
Okay, good.
The process cost.
So what we are trying to say is that by and large you can, we were talking about that example of fanning desires. You can fan desires by exposure to circumstances and temptations. Of course, they say in Indian mythology that a true yogi is one who is not affected by external temptations and desires. So that's another philosophy altogether. If that were true, the entire concept of manufacturing and generation of new products and goods would go flop, because you would not need any new products. Okay. But anyway, so when does a desire become a need? It's actually the need. You see, we have so many desires, not all of them get fulfilled. And in fact, one way you can define happiness is the number of desires fulfilled divided by the number of desires entertained. Okay? And if you define happiness in that manner, we generate so many desires, and a small fraction of them, not even 5% of them, get satisfied in that sense. So your happiness coefficient is only 5% from that point of view. On the other hand, if you look at it from the Indian perspective, what they say is the so-called the emphasis in advertising, modern advertising, is on increasing the number of desires entertained, and then the man strives to satisfy more and more desires, and hopefully he becomes happier. But the Indian perspective is totally different. He says, forget about all those, try to reduce the number of desires entertained. So you are now talking about the denominator of this particular ratio. So when you reduce the number of desires entertained, ultimately if it is 0, your happiness goes to infinite, and that is bliss. That's what they say, right? Nirvana, in that sense of the term. But anyway, so when does a need become when does a desire become a need? When a desire becomes strong enough and warrants fulfillment, it becomes a need. That's essentially what it is. And what do these people, marketing guys, ensure? They make sure that they first generate with you a desire, and gradually they keep fanning it and make sure that that desire becomes so strong that it becomes a need, and they can. You know how Kellogg sold cornflakes in Japan? Kellogg's wanted, this is the marketing policy we are talking about. Kellogg's sell cornflakes, and normally cornflakes are eaten with milk. Unfortunately, the Japanese did not have the habit of taking any milk at all. It was not a part of their diet. So as a long-term strategy, what Kellogg did was, it started distributing milk free in the Japanese schools, so that over a number of years the students and so on, they started liking milk. And when that happened, they introduced this product, and of course gradually you see that cornflakes is now very, very popular in Japan as well. This is called fanning the needs. Again, I mean, I'm just trying to tell you, it's a long-term strategy to basically do this. So customer demand is based on real or artificially generated needs. This is an important thing. Your needs could be real or they could be artificially generated. Much of the misery in the world is because we are running after artificially generated needs which we don't really need. Your wife or your girlfriend requires, let's say, a real leather purse or some such thing, very expensive. Why does she want all that? It is not really required. It's a futile thing. She can actually carry most of her stuff in a canvas bag, and she doesn't have to do that. Now if people had that attitude, that would be different. So the point really is that the marketing and sales people have played a very significant role in trying to convert desires into needs, and that's where they survive, right? So customer demand could be real or artificially generated, and needs are constantly changing. I think this is an important thing to note. Why are needs changing? Because your lifestyles are changing. Earlier people used to cook in in ordinary huts, so you would need wood, and you would need and the flue would go out, and you have this thing. Look at the modern kitchen. The modern kitchen has a gas stove. Not only that, it has fancy equipment in this. It has all kinds of very smooth kind of drawers. It has a very nice chimney. It has all these things. All these products have come. Why? Because the lifestyle has changed, and therefore the changing needs of the situation have actually generated this problem. And basically new product development is about this change. We are constantly in a process of change, and we are trying to make use of this particular thing. Yeah, we were talking about generating ideas. So now what I have here is a graph which shows the number of ideas you have generated at brainstorming, which could be, again, this is estimated that on the average for every one successful product you have to generate something like 35 to 40 ideas. Of course, this is just indicating, and these ideas behave in a certain manner. These ideas are dying down, right? It's a process of death for these ideas. You have generated 40 ideas, and ultimately you select only one idea for implementation. So the remaining 39 ideas have died during this process. That's why we call this curve the mortality of ideas. And there are some typical stages in this entire process. Stages are, the first stage is the screening process we talked about. In the screening process, typically this is the steepest part of the curve here, and then the slope keeps on reducing as you go along. So roughly half the ideas die in screening. That means and then when it is subject to rigorous economic evaluation, you find that many of the ideas don't stand up to a rigorous economic evaluation. So many ideas die during this process. Subsequently, in the process of development of the product and developing the prototype, again there are casualties, but the casualty rate is smaller here. And at the stage of testing, there are generally very few casualties, right? When you have developed something and you are testing the product, it's very few. And after testing, you have the stage of commercialization. So one. Typically what is happening is that the time required from the first stage of thinking about the product to the stage of commercialization is actually the lead time of the product, or the time required for producing the product and getting it into the market. This could be anything depending upon the product, anything from, let us say, 3 months to 24 months, depending upon whatever the product is. For instance, developing an aircraft, typically for a Boeing these days, the development time is something like 1.5 years, right? So 36 months. But developing a new electronic item or a new design of a camera, you find almost every day. You know, this is said about cameras that you buy a camera from Singapore and just go out, go to the toilet and come back to tell him how do you operate it. He says, sorry sir, this is obsolete, the new one has come. And that's the kind of lead times that we are talking about when you are talking about the mortality of ideas. What exactly do we mean by a product policy? The product policy could be, that means we are actually defining our priorities. We are defining what the product should be doing. So in some products, the first policy may be very relevant. Minimum price, whatever the quality, which means that there is no focus on quality. You are only interested in a minimum price for the product. Quality is not, of course, some minimum level of quality should be there, but that is there. Can you give me an example of such a product in which you are concerned with minimum price and quality is not important? And when you are dealing with such products, your approach to product design will be different. So this kind of a policy would generally be relevant for those products which are like use once and throw away. You use once and throw away. So there could be many such products, right? A matchstick, for instance, use once and throw away. So you are very keen and interested that in the product the price should be minimum. Let's take the other example, maximum quality whatever the cost. What do you think this kind of policy would be relevant for which kind of products? Quality is paramount, cost is not an important area. Normally such policies would be relevant where danger to human life is involved. You are designing an aircraft, safety systems, so cost just skyrockets. Of course cost is important, but the primary thing there is primary quality. Similarly, there could be other situations where safety and reliability could be paramount in certain products. Certain other products might have precision and prestige value, nothing else. What do you mean by that? There is an interesting story about precision and prestige. Say for instance, if you're talking about Rolls-Royce making cars, it's a very expensive car, and or for that matter even Mercedes-Benz, it would apply even to them. They are making very good cars, so on. But take the example of Rolls-Royce. If they are making cars, it's not that particular product fetches greater revenue by virtue of the technological developments which are there. It is by virtue of the prestige, you know, so many years of work has gone into it, and it's the prestige. Same thing about Swiss watches like Omega and others. It's basically the prestige value there which is more important, and so on. So that could be another aspect. Normally most consumer products fall into this category, satisfactory balance between quality and price. That's what the modern Indian housewife looks for when she goes to shop, and same, I mean, whatever the housewife looks for, the husband has to look for the same thing. That is, there has to be a satisfactory balance between quality and price. You want a good detergent but not expensive, and so on. Okay, so of course depending upon the segment you have this. Of course another aspect could be versatility. You could try to build versatility into the product. That's the objective. So the point really that we are making is that depending upon the product and depending upon its range of applications, you have different objective functions. You have to choose and design a product depending upon whatever its application is, in that sense of the term. Product analysis. How do we do product analysis? Typically we talk about these four stages. We talk about the marketing aspect, we talk about the product characteristics, we talk about the economic aspect, and we talk about the production aspect. In this particular lecture we will try to talk about these various aspects except the economic aspect, which we will talk about in the next lecture. So the marketing aspect, when you are talking about the marketing aspect, you have aspects like who the customer is, what are his needs, how do you reach him, and things of that kind. Product characteristics, which talk about the functional aspect, how the product functions. Is it easy to operate or not? What is the operational aspect? Durability and dependability, basically aspects of quality, and the aesthetic aspect of the product. Every product should have should do well on all these fronts, and then of course it must be able to do well in the market and give you a rate of return. And the production aspect, where you are talking about the ease with which you can produce it or the economy of production, things of that kind. It should be taken into consideration right at the stage of designing the product itself. Let's talk about these aspects in some detail. When you are talking about the marketing aspect of a product, which is generally more important, typically this is why we are very keen on the marketing aspect. Who is our customer? You must identify your customer. Is it just one factory located in Hyderabad, or is it a group of individuals located in the north of the country or somewhere else? So who is the customer? What are his needs? How to reach him? This is also important, because this in fact designs the logistics system when you are trying to talk about the product. And the tools and techniques that you have to answer these questions are doing a marketing research, market research, forecasting, advertising. All these things are important to when you are talking about assessing the demand, finding out where the customer is, reaching him, and so on. So this is the crux of the marketing aspect, because you must know the customer when you are, for whom you are designing the product. You must understand whether the customer is a frail, dainty housewife, or whether the customer is a rugged coal miner in Bihar, because this makes a considerable amount of difference in the designs of controls and so on. Suppose you were to design a battery for both these people. If you were to design a battery for the coal miner, which has to operate in an environment, if you have ever been to a coal mine, all kinds of fumes and liquids coming down, and you just go down into the trolley and you see this, and it's all dark, so you need a very rugged kind of a torch. So maybe he'll just hammer it and then it should come out, something like that. Whereas on the contrary, if you're designing a same torch for the typical Indian housewife who is so frail and easily hurt, she has to basically make sure that the controls can be there with the just one tick of the hand. See, there's the difference. So knowing the customer is important, and this is what we mean by the marketing aspect. Then we are going to talk about how do we go from the customer's needs to the product specifications. We have said, okay, this is our customer, whether it's a coal miner or a housewife, and their demands are these. So how do we go from there to designing the product? These are some of the tools available to a product designer. Commonly used tools: quality function deployment, QFD, which basically translates the customer requirements into the product specifications, right? And that's important for the product designer. Value analysis, the Taguchi method, computer aided design, design for manufacturability, design for assembly, prototyping. These are all available to the product designer, and he can actually, this will help him make a transition from the stage of the customer needs to developing the detailed product. Let's say, for instance, that just to illustrate this aspect of QFD, or quality function deployment. Quality function deployment, let's say for a laptop. Okay, so we want to design a laptop, and for this laptop you talk to your potential customers. Who are the potential customers for a laptop? Again, you need information on that. People in academic institutions, the marketing and research guys in various organizations who use laptops and carry them in the aeroplane and don't talk to you here and there because they're busy on the laptop all the time, right? So let's say that the customer requirements which are collected from the customers are, they want the laptop to be lightweight, they want it to be small size, they want that there should be a long operation between recharging of the battery. That means once you charge a battery, I should be able to go from London to New York and back to London and back to Singapore, and I don't have to charge the battery. That's what he's saying. Okay, long operation between recharging. There should be large keys on the keyboard, not small keys. There should be a short time to recharge the whole thing, not whole night, but just half an hour, 1 hour, whatever it is. There should be a readable screen, it should be durable, and it should have a fast processor and a large memory. These are some requirements that have been given by the customer. Okay. Then what you can do is you can ask the customers to prioritize these. Okay. You can use pairwise comparisons or anything, and let's say the result is this on a scale of 1 to 5. So lightweight gets a weight of 4.5, small size gets this much weight, and so on. Then what is important is these are customer requirements, all of these. We would like to relate these to the technical attributes of the product which the product designer is going to be talking about. So the product designer has identified, let us say, 6 of these attributes. What are these attributes? A is the case material that he uses for the case. B is the battery type and size. C is the screen type and size. D, RAM capacity, hard drive type and size, and F is the keyboard type and size. So because he can play mainly with these particular things, so A, B, C, D, E, F, and the importance attribute on a scale again from, let's say, 1 to 10 is something like saying that lightweight, as far as lightweight is concerned, this can be contributed by A, which is the case material, to the extent of, you know, small contribution 3, but B, which is the battery type size, this is generally very heavy, and therefore it can contribute to a very large extent on this particular requirement of the customer, and similarly for these various attributes. So these are the contributions that this interpretation within this box here would be made by the product designers, let's say, and say roughly how much they can contribute to various things. Having got this matrix, what you can easily do is you can find out the weightage that should be given to individual attributes. What it means is, for instance, to A, 4.5 into 3, 2.0 into 9, and the total weight is 31.5, and similarly for each of these. So we know the weights that have to be given to the individual attributes here. Now this information can help us in deciding the focus and the contributions that should be made on different fronts. For instance, there is a term called the house of quality, and the house of quality typically looks like this, right? And the typical house of quality for our example is shown here for the laptop. So we have the customer requirements here. These were the importance weights which we computed, and this is the matrix which we just filled up, and then we can talk about these technical attributes. The technical attributes of the case, battery, screen, RAM, hard disk, and the keyboard, we can actually convert in the crown of the hut. We can do whether how these various factors are correlated. For instance, what has been seen is that the case and the hard disk are strongly negatively correlated, or it doesn't really make any difference, you know, in terms of these, and similarly for others. So this is that correlation, and then you can compare yourself, your company, which is us, with various competitors. So competitor 1, competitor 2, competitor 3, and then this is the target, and normally this evaluation is done by the customers. What is it? So in the eyes of the customer, as far as lightweight is concerned, we are number 3, we gets 3 points, competitor 1 gets 3 points, this competitor gets 4 points, and so on. Whichever is the best, that is the largest, that is 4. So 4 divided by 3 is 1.3. So it shows that we are, I mean, from the best, we are still, the best is 1.3 times better than us. That's the implication of this ratio, and it tells you how to go. And similar things can be done here. For in this particular aspect of long operation, we are the best, 5, and the best is 5, so you have this. So this aspect is nothing but the customer evaluation. This is the target, which is the best product, and the ratio, which is the target to us compared to whatever it is. And then as far as these, we can also do an evaluation of the various firms on the various products like case, battery and so on. So those are shown here. The raw importance which we had calculated by multiplying these weights 31.5, 118.5 and so on, this gives a total figure of 381. And finally converted into a percentage, it shows that ultimately you need to give 8.3% weightage to case, 31.1% to battery, most important, 13% to screen, 13.8 to RAM, 16.9 each to hard disk and keyboard. So it's a way to basically consolidate information pertaining to the customer requirements, and from the customer requirements we deduce what should be the weightages given to designing the individual components or the product specifications. And of course you have also this information on how you are comparing with other attributes. So very useful bit of information you can get from the house of quality. Another tool that the product designer has is value analysis. Value analysis, as you know, is something where you define the function of each component, you talk about primary and secondary functions, and you can identify poor value functions and eliminate them and come up with a design which has a higher value and a lower cost, right. So that's it. That means you critically analyze each component and see what function is it performing and is it performing the function that it was designed for. That's basically the attitude in value engineering. In Taguchi methods, what you are doing is you develop a robust design. That's the intention. How do you develop it? You use a loss function with appropriate range for aimed at target value. If any particular specification in a product is violated, there is a loss to the company, quality loss. So keeping that in mind, then you identify which are the design parameters of interest which affect your quality function, and you design experiments to determine which combination of parameters affect quality most. Normally the use of orthogonal arrays limits the search, and based on these experiments you can develop a robust design. That's the basic objective. In robust design means that you're talking about a design which is capable of operating not only within one value but a range of temperatures, pressures or whatever the parameters are. Of course you are all familiar with CAD. What does CAD do for the designer? We're just talking about that. So use of the software that you have in CAD permits development of drawings, orthographic plus isometric views very quickly. It permits rotation and viewing from different angles, which is generally very difficult otherwise for complicated parts. You have a drawing of an engine and you want to see an engine from different views. It could be pretty complicated there. Visualization of alternative designs becomes easier. Compatibility of various assemblies can be found out. You can find out whether this door design in a car will actually hit something or not hit something if the door is closed before designing the door for the car. That's the idea. Producing files and drawings for manufacture becomes easier. Easy updation and transfer to needed locations. That's another advantage of CAD. You can have a design office in Delhi, you can do the manufacturing in Bangalore and transfer the files immediately through the internet or through an intranet, as the case may be. This concept of design for manufacturability, basically what we are trying to do here is to make sure that the product is easy to manufacture, and you take care of this aspect during the design itself. How do you do this? You use catalogs of information, guidelines, checklists, tables, charts, diagrams and graph to develop a design plan, decompose products into components and assemblies, evaluate the production costs of production designs and simplify and improve product design. This is the kind of thing which you do. And design for manufacturing and design for assembly are very much linked, and the methodology focuses mainly on machining, handling, assembly, design, dimensions, clearances, shape, orientation. So you choose these aspects and see that the whole thing is easy to make. So design for manufacturing and assembly was developed by Geoffrey Boothroyd and Peter Dewhurst, these two people, and these days they are talking of the new concept is the design for service, DFS. It's a recent concept which says that when a product is made, if a certain component requires frequent service, it should be kept at the outside or an easily accessible place. Prototyping, generating the prototype basically gives you a feel for the final product. So with increasing competition, it is imperative to reduce costs and lead times, and rapid prototyping machines produce the 3D parts by generating and joining slices. You generate slices of parts and put them together and generate a 3-dimensional shape, and stereolithography is a commonly used technology for this purpose, though of course other technologies are also available these days. So finally, in conclusion, we can say that we have looked at the product life cycle, starting from the stage of generating ideas by brainstorming to the stages of economic evaluation, prototype, till the stage of commercialization. We have seen how the process of idea generation and screening takes place. We have looked at the marketing aspect. We have looked at the product features like function, operation, quality, durability, dependability, aesthetics, and the production aspect. And in order to build these functions into the design, we have seen that the commonly used tools for a product designer, we have merely tried to look at some of these tools in terms of quality function deployment, which actually takes the customer's word and translates it into the specifications of the product, value analysis, Taguchi methods, CAD, DMF, DFA, and prototyping. We have, as I indicated to you, not looked at the aspect of economics. So in the next lecture, we'll focus on the economics of new product launch and see what kinds of techniques, what kinds of financial tools are necessary for doing this particular analysis. Thank you very much.